For most of its citizens, Appleton, Wisconsin is a great place to live. Appleton in the Fox Cities area is home to over 70,000 people. 91% of them are white. Many of these people enjoy downtown Appleton's many restaurants and stores with a feeling of safety and security. For the other 9%, however, Appleton is a very different place.
I was at one of our middle schools and I had a African-American girl in the group that I was talking to, and I looked at her and I said, so, you know, how are you doing? How do you like Appleton? How's your family doing? And she told the story of my mom and dad brought us here from Milwaukee because they wanted to be somewhere that they felt was more safe. And then she went on to say, but we don't feel very welcome here, and they're thinking about moving. And that just broke my heart. We've got to do something about this. It's not right.
You know, for the majority of the community, Appleton seems to be a great place to live, but for some individuals, it isn't the most welcoming place.
One incident that I'll never forget that just actually recently happened, and I was walking back from my core meeting and this red car comes like driving by really slow, and it seemed like a very intentional act. And so they rolled by and they said, "You go suck that fat cock, you nigger."
The issue of people of color not feeling comfortable in downtown Appleton because of racial slurs being directed their way came to my attention a couple years ago. I was shocked. And I was upset. And I think back about, why didn't I know about this? I think that's the thing I was most upset about, was why has it taken this long for somebody to point this out to me? Number one, I'm white. It doesn't happen to me when I walk downtown, and it won't happen to me.
Just that, you know, those stories that we hear from those individuals, I think, are frustrating because it isn't what we want Appleton to be.
So I think as a person of color living in Appleton, there's definitely always like a continual adjustment that I have to do, kind of adjusting like myself and who I am. Because I remember like recently I was at like a meeting for work, and this lady like asked how to pronounce my name, and she, after I like said it to her like how to pronounce it, she was like, "Oh yeah, you gotta like be patient with me, like that stuff is scary, like we don't have these names up here."
When I wake up, I literally have to put on like armor. I have to know that I'm gonna probably get hit with about 10 racial microaggressions before I even enter my office.
There's some very blatant racism, and there's also microaggressions.
We know of stories like that. We know of stories where people just automatically come up and touch a black woman's hair. People might not think that's racism, but that's outright racism, that somebody thinks they have the right to a black woman's body.
So what happens is, I get in my car, I go to the gas station. Right there, a racial microaggression is going to take place, and this has happened where not only in the store is there a representation of the Confederate flag, but there's these all lives matter. Then there's I'll shoot first and ask later. Boom. So then I'm hit with that. Now I have to feel kind of like on guard. So then I get into my car, I'm on my way to work, and I see a cop. So the cop follows me, not intentional, but right there, that's going to get me really like riled. It's just going to get me scared. So eventually I get to the office, I get to my parking lot, and now I'm like really up in guard because now I have to cross the street. And I already know that there's a huge chance that somebody is going to say the N-word when I cross the street, or I might get hit. And now my mental health is kind of like, it's playing with me because I've seen too many of these racial microaggressions taking place.
I think when I hear things like that, it makes me uneasy a little bit. Like I kind of don't know how to react to it. I don't know how to like I don't know how I should feel about it.
What happens is it basically breaks down their psyche. So basically it can cause them to go into depression, and it can cause them to go into anxiety because of just this sense of not feeling important, not feeling as a human, and not feeling as if anyone cares about you. On a professional level, seeing the students of color that I see, their mental health is really declining because of that.
We really need to put a stop to that, rather than just making it very normalized.
Situations involving racism sometimes go beyond microaggressions or verbal abuse. Racism makes people feel unsafe and unwelcome in the place that they are supposed to call home. Situations involving racism sometimes go beyond microaggressions or verbal abuse. The issue of racism is complex, and it affects everyone in a community, no matter their skin color. At times, racism in Appleton is upfront and very dangerous.
It was New Year's Eve, and we had went downtown to get food from a Mr. Taco.
We'd first entered into Mr. Taco, trying to get through all of these people who were pretty drunk.
This one guy who was of African American descent, he comes up to my friend, and as she's eating her taco, mind you, and he starts, you know, kind of getting really close to her, almost, you know, spitting in her food.
And then it kind of escalated from me to asking him to move to, like, within 2 minutes, he was calling me the N-word lover, and he was calling Danny racial slurs.
I remember there being a lot of, you know, white females with him, and they ended up joining in on the racial slurs.
So we had gotten up, and they had followed us. I remember security pushing Danny. As I was walking out, I remember getting slammed into the side of the wall, and my hair was getting pulled. And we walked out, and I had lost Danny. There was like 10 of them, and they had surrounded both of us. I had turned around to see where my friend was, and somebody had whacked me in the face.
They pushed me on the floor. For some reason. I didn't say anything aside from, hey, can you guys stop?
The hate, I remember telling my friend, sitting down that night for like 3 hours, saying, I don't understand where hate like that comes from.
These are very real experiences that are very, very terrifying.
After experiences of racism on campus and in the community, students of color at Lawrence University decided to take action. In the fall of 2015, these students publicly submitted a list of demands and concerns to campus administration with a plan intending to make Lawrence and the Appleton community a safer and more welcoming place.
A student came and saw me during open office hours and invited me to a meeting, and that then turned into a meeting where the demands were submitted. And I think what was most meaningful to me for that night was experiences that students were willing to share with me. They were powerful, and I think that they very clearly illustrated how we as an institution can do a lot better than we're doing right now.
We, the students of color at Lawrence University, refuse to live on a campus where racism, hatred, and bigotry occur on a daily basis. We demand that Lawrence University become a place of inclusion, safety, and support for marginalized groups. We, as the institution of Lawrence University, will and can do better than this. We have drafted a list of demands and concerns that we want implemented and addressed immediately. We will respond with civil disobedience, protest, and other means if these demands are not met within a timely manner.
I posted the list of demands, which was a public document that had been shared publicly before, onto our Facebook page with a statement from me being the CODA chair.
Over winter break, we really tried to meet through the shared governance committees to try to come up with a new framework, which we announced at the beginning of winter term.
I think the students educated the community, and that is not what they're supposed to be doing when they're here. They're supposed to be getting an education for themselves, but they got to the point where they were tired of not being heard.
And a lot of that turns into us like being the educators and being the ones who like speak for our cultures and our backgrounds and things like that. I think that takes a lot from a person.
I think the students of color don't get enough credit for the activism that they're doing and the racial justice work that they're doing. But I'm extremely proud of the students really standing up and demanding what they need, something that is really like doable, and something that should have been provided to them a while ago.
We wouldn't be doing all of this work if we weren't hopeful for any change at all. This is a movement that is done for the future Laurentians that are coming. We're graduating, a lot of us are graduating this year, so we're not going to see the fruits of our labor, so to speak, but that's really not why we're doing this. We're doing it for future students of color who come here because we don't want them to have the same experiences that we did.
I think some of the most challenging moments in dealing with race and racism in the city of Appleton has been educating white people and educating people who don't identify as people of color.
I think that that's what we're up against as a community, a campus community, a Fox Cities community, and quite honestly, a larger United States community, because there are over 150 now, probably over 200 institutions that are really having the kinds of conversations that Lawrence is having right now.
When we heard from students on Lawrence University campus, we heard from them loud and clear that their experiences in Appleton were not acceptable. And so as a city, we were working with them around building a more welcoming community for them.
Change is hard for any community, and we see this on college campuses across the country, as well as the host municipalities where these institutions are located.
For a community really that has prided itself on its engagement in making some headway with its diversity, we know that we still have some more work to do.
In the end, we're on a learning journey together. We're really trying to think about these issues and understand them better.
So my hope is that white folks start to get it, like really start to want to get it. When I do dismantling racism, it's not about the folks of color in that room, because they already know they're part of that. They're just a part of that pain. It's about making sure that white folks really make sure that, you know, they need to take the time to get it, and like really open up some eyes and really allow folks to acknowledge that racism exists. It's concrete. It's here. And in order for us to really combat that, we have to acknowledge that and then move from there.